back, Willie.
Oh God. What's
apparently,
up,
uh,
degenerates?
apparently, last week's episode was very well received, as well as very well not received, depending on which side the crypto sphere, as you can call it, you're on. But I guess reality and truth and basic economic principles and understanding finance and again reality really triggered some of the hopeful folks in crypto.
Yeah, no, those diamond hands are going to come in great for holding the fryer at McDonald's, but that's not really our problem. I think the cryptosphere is turning out to be more of a flat Earth, and the
Right.
ones that adhere to it are going to be uh, equally mocked, like the
And, f-
flat earthers, and they should be mocked.
and full discretion, we own shares, a lot of shares in McDonald's, and we love McDonald's. And just full disclosure there.
Yeah, not financial or dietary advice.
Now, well, I love McDonald's. So
Oh God,
what, a quarter
please.
pound, dude? A quarter pounder with cheese,
Okay, this is an
phenomenal.
expensive microphone. If I vomit on it, I'm gonna be upset.
I'll be another write off.
Actually, wait,
Well,
maybe the
well,
maybe the windsock can deflect my vomit and keep the sensitive electronics from shorting out.
well. The way the IRS is going against companies, we won't have any more write offs.
That's true. But yeah, so what has been going on this past week? I mean,
Man,
aside from the crypto winter continuing.
this past week has been quite intense. I mean, today is the start of the third quarter. Yesterday was
Mm-hmm.
the end of the second quarter,
Yep.
and this month is going to be quite interesting with earnings. I think it's going to be a telling month with all these earnings to see how companies are reporting and a lot of other key numbers and what the Fed's going to do.
Mm-hmm.
I think, I mean, you and I have discussed this. It's definitely going to be another 75 basis points. They have to do that.
Oh yeah.
Um,
But now they're predicting rate cuts by Q1 of 23. I don't know if that's just ignorance, stupidity, or wishful thinking, or maybe perhaps a combination of the three.
right. I mean, I do feel for the Fed though, right? If you're the Fed chair, it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of it's a balancing act, right? Because not like
Right.
before when you have social media, you know, corrupt currencies like crypto, uh,
Corruptocurrency, yeah.
Cryptocurrency, yes, thanks for correcting me there. And the speed of information, right? So it's so different today, and I feel for Chairman Powell. So it's
Yeah.
playing a balancing act because back in the day when Volcker and others were able to manage inflation, you had traditional news outlets, you had those sorts, but with social media and how fast information is getting, how political things are
Mm-hmm.
today compared to before, it's a balancing act.
Right.
So, so I guess with the rate cuts rumor for Q1 2023, I would imagine would be to try to calm the markets a little bit while trying
Mm-hmm.
to still deal with reality. So that's where I see it. I mean, if I was Chairman Powell, I'll be trying to play that delicate balance because you and I would be very blunt. I mean, if we were
Right.
Fed
This
chairs,
is why we're not Fed chair.
right, we'll be back. I mean, that's where I would come in and try to help with the public perception because that's part of what we do.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but it's very delicate. So I feel for Chairman Powell on what he has to do and what EU central bank chair or president Christine Lagarde has to do. Right, try to really
Yeah.
balance the heat of the information, reality, and then trying to execute on what needs to happen.
Well,
And
honestly, I think Fed chair is much like being a senator or the president. It's one of those jobs where no matter what you do, everyone's going to think you're a piece of shit, and everyone's going to think you're an idiot. But none of them are qualified to do the job any better themselves. I
right,
personally think the rate cuts for Q1 of next year are utterly ridiculous. I
no,
think that's people trying to delude themselves. And honestly, let's be upfront. We've had the worst first half of the market since 1970, right? I think we're down over
that's pretty
20%.
bad.
And that's awful. And dating back to 1970. Oh, by the way, the OPEC crisis hit us in 73. So this is literally the worst first half of the year since even before the OPEC crisis.
Are we having
That's pretty
flashbacks?
freaking bad. Probably. I mean, we never got to live through the 70s. So I guess this is now our opportunity. And 20%, again, unless you're Kathy Wood, in which case you'd be down 60, but 20% is nothing to scoff at. Like, I would be terrified and I would be grasping at straws as well, if I weren't married to my logic. So I don't blame people for, putting out these nonsense sound bites, and it's pointless. Powell's hiked interest rates 7 times what they were in the Volcker years. That's idiotic. Okay, this is just people trying to sell themselves some snake oil to kind
Right.
of salve the burns that they've been having for the last 6 months.
Yeah, I just think we're going through a major global economic and geopolitical transition right now. And that's really playing a heavy part into what
Oh
we're
yeah,
seeing right now.
oh
JP
yeah.
Morgan just momentarily, not momentarily, just moments ago, um, cut their economic growth forecast to
Mm-hmm.
practically near a recession. So
Yeah.
it's at any day now they're seeing it, if not already in it, and that's
Oh yeah.
significant coming from J.P. Morgan. But I think a lot of people really need to look into the core issues, which is, yes, it's geopolitical. There's a lot of geopolitical and supply chain issues, and the war with Ukraine and all that, with which is really hurting supplies. But it's also a failure, and we just touched on this last week. Huge failure in governments managing the situation. We don't.
Yep.
The United States has had decades to take control of supply chains, and you and I have been very active in this over the past 5-7 years.
About that, yeah.
From rare earth minerals to 5G, and to numerous, to chip making, to other matters that we've worked on, whether it's directly as investments and or as consultants to these companies and to these fields, to be able to get more support. Because when you have these unforeseen matters that pop up, like the war in Ukraine, which again, that could be debated if it's foreseen or not, um, and we're not able to handle it economically. And that's really a big failure by multiple administrations in the government. I think a great example is with the chip issue right now, semiconductor chips. Intel and numerous other companies were
Hmm.
promised by this administration, and I think the previous administration as well, that they will get support,
Right.
funding, regulatory, and other matters, other support to build domestically. And that's huge.
Right.
I mean, that is monumental, because we really don't have our own independence when it comes to those materials. And that will create a lot of jobs. That will really give us the ability to not be dictated and to be leveraged against by other nations who make these products. And it's a whole combination. So yes, you can, you can always blame things that you weren't able to see and all that, but let's be honest, we've all seen this coming, right? And
Oh,
my
absolutely.
fear, and my biggest fear, is that it's not just semiconductor chips, right? We're going to start seeing
It's not.
this. We're already seeing this with OPEC and oil, and obviously Russia Ukraine war. You're going to start seeing it in rare earth minerals. I mean, China practically controls, what, 80 to 90% of that market, and that's
Certainly
going to
about
be,
80% of what we use,
yeah, and
because
that's going to
that's what we
be
import.
a big issue, and many other things, right? I mean, we just saw a piece this past week about electric vehicles, right? I mean, vehicles now also being made in China, the batteries made in China. So there is a lot of concern here, and a lot of our listeners and hopefully voters wake up. I know private sector has woken up a bit, and they're trying to lobby as much as they can, but with all the distraction, other issues, and I'm not downplaying other issues, but issues that you're complaining about are going to be nothing when economically we're dictated by other countries and we're hurting like we are now, but even worse.
Oh, absolutely. And what you say about the so-called leadership, just having their heads firmly in their asses. I mean, you saw that California have had the brilliant idea to combat inflation by sending out more stimulus checks,
Oh,
uh,
great.
which which is what caused this to begin with. And while the current administration gets a lot of grief for their Build Back Worser initiative, that never actually survived, right? If I remember correctly, that passed the House and it died in Senate because it
Yeah,
couldn't
it
get
died.
the majority.
They're negotiating right now in the Senate.
Right.
And the key person has been Manchin
Not
uh,
surprising.
the either the woman from, oh, I should know this because I know her. This is awkward. I
Well, let's hope she's
apologize in
not
advance.
listening.
Yeah, she's the senator from Arizona, but regardless,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
um, they're the two key ones, and right now they're looking to modify and keep the uh, proposed tax raises to corporations and the high net
Yeah.
worths much lower than what they were proposing.
Right. And honestly, some of the parts of the American Rescue Plan are to blame for this, in addition to the just rampant stimulus. The simple fact is you cannot spend your way out of inflation. Right. It's only going to make it worse. And like we've mentioned before, for a year and change, year and a half or so, a little more, uh, all of the modern monetary theorist idiots have been celebrating because look, we injected trillions into the economy and nothing happened and blah blah blah. Inflation is a lie. And they forget that there's a thing called phase lag, and now we're all paying for it. And of course, they are nowhere to be seen or heard, which I guess is a blessing in disguise. But you bring up a good point that we've spent decades perfecting, the Toyota way of manufacturing and services. However, we can. We have, the just-in-time inventory, the lean manufacturing, et cetera, and that's all fantastic when things are going well. Okay, now
Right.
we got a real cold shower in terms of why we need to start appreciating just in case inventory and that approach to products, because this has been what, 2 years, 2.5 years almost, and nothing is actually fixed. Okay, we still have supply chain issues. We're not running out of toilet paper anymore, but you know, no formula was a big issue. Now we're going
Even
back to
tampons.
even tampons. Right now we're going back to other consumer goods and even metals, which are typically pretty good bellwether of the economy, specifically the industrial metals like copper and aluminium. They're dropping. I mean, copper's down, below 8,000 uh, for the first time in a long time.
Right.
And there's a lot of handwriting on the wall that says this is not going to end well, and we're just starting to feel the pain. But sure, let's keep projecting, rate cuts, and let's just keep ignoring
Right.
the problem. And as far as our
And why is copper a good measurement for our listeners? Why is copper and metals a good measurement into where the economy is?
So when you think of investment metals, everyone immediately flocks to gold, silver, platinum, all the shiny crap, right? And obviously that those things have value, right? I wouldn't mind owning a couple ounces of platinum right now. But when you're looking at the economy as a whole, we typically don't build our machines and our industrial processes out of gold and silver, at least not that I have seen. What we build them out of is iron vis-a-vis steel, or steel vis-a-vis iron, however that is supposed to go. We use copper a lot in our electronics, including the wonderful tech that we're using to bitch at each other. And wiring is a huge user of copper, not just for homes, but also for telco. Anything with a circuit in it that carries power is going to have copper. Aluminium is used a lot in various manufacturing processes, obviously aerospace, you know, we run almost entirely on that stuff, not only for building but also repairing. And so when the prices of those drop, again, what's the only reason that a price can move? It's a shift in demand, right? So when prices are dropping, it's usually indicative of demand dropping. Well,
Mm,
why is demand dropping for industrial metals? Because the manufacturers are getting ready for a crunch. Okay,
yeah,
they're accepting what everyone else seems to be avoiding. So
right.
that's
Got it.
the
Yep.
long-winded answer.
Well, and also the effects of that is also when the prices go down with copper and metals, the cost of goods sold to the consumer rises as well. And that's a double whammy. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm just seeing here, car sales are slowing because a lot of the prices are rising now, as well
Again,
as the
yeah.
shortage of supplies, right? And
Yep.
and home sellers are slashing prices not only because of a sudden halt to the boom of people buying homes, but also there's still a shortage of materials.
Yeah.
So I mean, overall, it just sounds like the economy is just a complete clusterfuck, and it's getting worse. um,
we're, we're
but
so
like,
doomed. It's just there's no other way of putting it.
but to give comfort to our listeners, the US economy always bounces back, right? I mean, there's
Right.
so much going on when you're reading the news and you're talking to friends, and you're hearing a million different things that are going on, right? Our biggest thing that we tell our friends, and now we're telling our listeners, is patience and discipline. We always refer back to Warren Buffett and to what's his name from Renaissance Technologies Investment,
Oh, Simons.
Simons, as well as Vanguard, right?
Yep.
When you invest long term into real value added, value producing investments into, and which is the U.S. economy, right? You're investing into America, then you always win in the long term. And this is a historical, data proven model, right? And that's
Oh,
what I
it's a
think
fire
our
sale.
right. I mean, that's why I think our listeners, we want to reiterate
Mhm.
that point, right? It's in times like this, be careful how you spend, be disciplined, save and invest, and don't act like it's a doomsday. Because when you think in the moment, right, you react emotionally and in the moment, irrationally, you're gonna look back regretting. And it's
Yeah.
time and time again, we've always had people to come to us and, oh, we should have listened. And it's like, well, yeah, for the third time or the fifth time. And I'm sure Warren and Simons and those guys hear it hundreds of times, right? So that's what we really want to get across to readers. I'm sorry, our listeners, is really to be patient and to be disciplined. And yes, it's good to know what's going on. Like, always keep up, read a lot. Good to know what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
Hold your local representative accountable for what they're doing in DC and also in your
Mhm.
local state capital. But just to be patient and disciplined, because in the long term, you're going to thank yourself, hopefully
And
folks
more
like us,
importantly, us.
us when you are in a better financial state.
Sure. And it's kind of a little bit doomsday, but the rate hikes don't just affect the housing, right? Housing is already torched. But it's the fact that when rates go up, it becomes more expensive for companies to issue bonds and to take on debt for
Those corporate bonds,
capital
yep,
capital expenditures and for expansion and for other projects, etc. So they're less inclined to do it. Obviously,
right,
uh, a lot of this is just going to be a feedback cycle of well, businesses aren't taking on debt to do capex and expansion, so they're contracting. Therefore, whatever's downstream of them that would have had value had the businesses done whatever it is that they're going to do, they're contracting. Everyone just kind of just squeezes themselves and liquidity dries up. And in a lot of ways, raising rates and recessions are kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. But people need to realize that, yeah, it's painful, it sucks, but much like having a cold or a flu, which is you feel like ass because your body is fighting off an infection. This is the economy fighting off the infections of idiotic speculation, of vaporware, of things that have no intrinsic value. And it's just, this is kind of the bill that we pay for years of just rampant short-sightedness on our part, and not ours personally, but us as a market, as a country, as a planet. We've spent a lot of time throwing good money after bad at magical unicorn dust, and guess what? The bills come due, and now everybody's looking for the exit. So no,
yeah, DCQ's fucking up too. Sorry.
Well, no, absolutely.
It's just,
in many ways,
it's just so irritating. I mean, I'm looking at a headline right now, and back to our point from earlier, GM says unfinished cars to hurt quarterly results. And why? It lacked computer chips and other parts, which is continuing the supply chain troubles, right? And
oh god,
people can go back. I mean, we've been talking about this since 2016, 2017, right? Warning people about this, and we warned lawmakers numerous times. I mean, luckily we had some executive orders that were passed through because of our efforts, but even then the execution is so poor. And that's what's talk about our bitching session. We're definitely gonna bitch about this. I mean, it is so annoying when, okay, look, you sign something into law or you get this done, but the execution side is just really the most irritating part, right? Because we're still seeing a lag when it comes to the rare earth mineral side, for example, because that was one of our marquee wins that we did in 2020, which was to loosen up restrictions and regulation when it comes to domestic mining, as well as domestic companies' ability to do it overseas, right? And to still continue to see us not taking advantage of that, it's really frustrating. And it's on both the private and the public sector, right? And
everyone supports it until they have to write a check,
right?
And then all of a sudden, oh no, we can't do that.
And that's what's really irritating. And we see it all the time. I mean, we have a couple mineral deals on ourselves without government support at all. But we're making
so those
it happen.
will be the successful ones,
right?
That's what we're predicting.
Right. I mean, they're putting all these panels and these committees together, right? These reviews and get these agency feedbacks, and it's just delaying time. Meanwhile, you see countries like China, and they're just doing it, right? They're just the government's like, hey, here's funding, do it, get it done.
You can accomplish a lot when you don't have personal rights or civil liberties. That's one thing I think is Ronnie Chang from that Netflix comedy special mentioned that that's the problem with America is too many freedoms. Part of the reason that we have we're not going to fix this anytime soon is that our political system is not set up for long-term vision, right? You sell hundreds of millions of people on your fanciful bullshit to get elected or reelected. But the simple fact is, when you've got chip fabs that take a decade to build and test out, when you have, power sources that take decades to design, build, test, certify, okay, fine. The current party line is Putin is to blame for gas prices, and rich people like Bezos and Musk are to blame for gas prices, and this is why every American should spend $50,000 on a new electric vehicle. Okay, great, but that doesn't actually fix anything, because all that's going to do is transfer costs from bucket A to bucket B, because we don't have an electrical or power generating infrastructure that doesn't still depend on oil or gas.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean,
we
that
had
just
the
goes
chance with
right.
nuclear.
I mean, that just goes back to, oh yeah, nuclear. I mean, that's the fact that France has beaten us to that is really
Oh,
embarrassing. But
France, Germany,
yeah,
everybody.
yeah. I mean that, and I think just on that point, real quick,
Mhm.
the poor perception and the lack of folks that are educated down talking nuclear, it's really
Mhm.
dangerous, right? You
Oh
know,
yeah,
the evolution and the innovations going on in nuclear energy is phenomenal. I mean, the
yeah,
likelihood of a meltdown or the likelihood of an issue, it's really, really minimal. It's not different than, you know, the current grids and the current way we're producing electric, you know, having issues.
sure.
And that
Well, with some
includes,
reactors, the chance of meltdown is zero. Like
yeah,
molten salt
exactly.
reactors
Right.
physically cannot.
Right. And there's further, and there's even on top of that, there's further innovations to make it even
Yeah.
more efficient and more effective. So, all these folks that are doing climate change and sustainability. I mean, I believe in the sustainability for sure. We need to have sustainable energy because oil's not gonna last forever, right? We're
Right.
never, we're not gonna have that forever. But if folks, if our government would just wake up and folks educate themselves, we need to have full support of nuclear because again, that is very sustainable, very cost effective, very safe, and very clean. And this
Yeah.
country will really start, start not I guess not worrying, but start better positioning itself globally, not only for the
Hmm.
green mission and all that la di da, but from a geopolitical standpoint, because then we're not seen as dependent on everyone else,
Right.
right? I mean, look, no one is going to beat us in the great innovation, the work
Hmm.
ethic, and the culture that we have for entrepreneurship, right? That's what keeps our advantage against everyone else. Even China and Japan and other countries admit to that, right?
Yeah.
Because you look at Xi Jinping and what China's doing, they're too one dimensional because they're just China only. I mean, that's what their
Right.
goal is. And I mean, they don't even make English as the standard language when all over the world, English is the standard business language. So
Sure.
that restricts them as well. And people don't go there, right, to study or to do better with entrepreneur. They don't. Where do they go? The
No, they
United
send them all
States.
here.
Yeah,
Yeah. If
exactly.
China's
So,
996
right.
nonsense work ethic of like 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days a week. Okay. If that actually works, then why aren't we sending our kids to, University of Nanjing to study? No, we educate the majority of the world's population that has high potential and that have the ability to come here and study. We educate them. We give them the inspiration and the brain space to innovate, like you said. And if you want proof that our way works, uh, China's grueling work mandates and social pressures to just work yourself to death and all this other nonsense. Okay, that's so widely adopted, but yet most of their so-called innovations are just copies and hack jobs of what were developed elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, their
So
navy ships
obviously that
sink.
doesn't work. Yes.
No, yeah, and exactly, and I bring these points up because our system works from that standpoint, right? I mean, our system provides the freedom, the ability to do what your passion is and to build business or to be the brightest in your space, whether it's legal, medical, or whatever it is, engineering, right? Whatever it
Mhm.
is, we have the brightest minds and we innovate. But where the flaw that we have, and I think this is where we can truly, really optimize our economy and our full potential as a nation, and to
Mhm.
really be able to use that as a way to influence other nations in a positive way, is to start also not only driving the innovation, driving the brightest minds, but also start producing and putting the work in when it comes to production, right? Because where China has
Oh yeah.
us is their ability to stockpile critical minerals that you can't make more of,
Mhm.
right? But also to make things, right? I mean, they make everything, right?
Well, yeah, we've
China,
outsourced our whole industry to them for the last 50 years.
yeah, China, Vietnam, India. Well, I guess India's just more teleservice, whatever. But it's that's where I think one of the biggest advantages that we can have is the ability to at least start making things. Now I know a lot of people will come back arguing with us about costs and everything like that,
Right.
but I'm sure Willie have a thought on this. We've talked about this before.
Well, I mean, it's easy to make stuff at a profit for really cheap if you're China, and your whole country is just one grotesque human rights violation after another, and you're paying 10-year-olds $1 a month to fit syringes together. But I honestly think one of the greatest things that has happened here in our country, at least lately, is this what I consider completely irrational demand for a huge spike in minimum wage. And it's not because I sympathize with these people, and it's certainly not because I think it's going to solve any social issues, but because it forces businesses to try to find ways of keeping the cost down. Right? You can't triple or quadruple your opex and salaries and expect to remain profitable. So what have we seen a lot of now? Like Misa Robotics. I think they're the ones that do like the little burger flipping and the
Yep.
French
Yep.
fry
Hmm.
automated. Stuff like that is, from a technological standpoint, really awesome. I mean, I really dig cute new innovations. But just as another example of unintended consequence and complete ignorance on our part of what happens downstream of an idea, you know, we are going to have to bring back manufacturing, reshore it, period. But it's not going to be the smokestack model that we think of before. Before we started sending everything to China, it's not going to be, the 8,000 workers and sweaty coveralls going into the factory every day. It's probably going to be highly automated.
Right.
And it's
Or a combination, right? It's a
sure.
mix. Right.
Right. The factory worker of yesteryear is now going to be the computer technician
Right.
and the robotics engineer, and that's going to be what drives it forward. And if you want another example of why we need to have chip fabrication and the making of the stuff that we need onshore, that's a great example. Because we're going to need that for the economy that our politicians have inexorably driven us to, which is
Hmm.
just everything through the roof. Get paid $50,000 a year to flip a burger, and that's not sustainable. And
No.
there is no way out of that that is palatable for anybody.
Right. So yeah, I mean, to me, it sounds like we need I mean, and it's the perfect moment for it. I'm not saying, full disclosure. I'm not saying have a World War II, but we need to have and this is a history lesson. World War II really ignited America to a whole new level, uh, because the war forced us to be different. Right? We started to
Right.
make things. We started to have a patriotic duty to be able to to do things ourselves, to control our own economy, control our own destiny, and start a whole grand master plan. And big kudos to FDR, right? Because him and his administration really drove that, and they partnered with the private sector, they partnered with the American people, right? And the American people bought in, and that was a very marquee moment. I don't think people truly realize how important it was. And put politics aside, because I know Republicans will say, "Oh, FDR, blah blah blah," or
Right.
Democrats will say, "Blah blah blah." We have to put politics aside, and that's one of the number one killers of why our economy is the way it is, and why there's always political mess, and why DC is a shit show, is politics. So we need to put that aside, and I think we need to have leaders, more leaders like Elon. Again, whether you like him or not, Elon has completely, for example, he's completely changed the public-private partnership with NASA, right? We mentioned this
Absolutely.
last week. So
Yep.
we need to we need to have a leader now in DC. I know we're doing a lot of our own on the private sector side and trying to influence DC. I know Elon and many others are trying to do so. And by the way, crypto is an innovation. I had to throw that in there. So don't listeners who are into crypto, you're not part of this.
But I want doggy coin.
But I believe, and if I was president, I would really be heavily putting a master blueprint together, call it America 2.0 or something, right? And putting together a grand plan and really start driving a vision and getting buy-in from private sector, from the American people, and say, look, this is our moment, right? We just got through a pandemic. There's a lot of geopolitical issues, but we need a great a reborn, right?
A rebirth, yeah.
A rebirth of America. And I think that's what we need right now. Sadly, we don't know what leaders that will come through yet that can drive that.
Probably none of them.
Definitely not what we're seeing in the Democratic side or the Republican side. Maybe the independent can come through. That could be great. Definitely not Howard Stern and Bradley Cooper. That was one of the dumbest things I read.
Was that a legitimate article? Because I read it a few times and I'm still convinced that it was an Onion page that got hacked or something.
No, it was legitimate source.
So that's a thing that happened, huh?
I hope they're joking, but that would be a great travesty. Like, you put that in the history books of what happens when you don't educate your population.
Well, I don't know. California had a porn star running for governor a while ago, so I guess anything's possible.
Yeah, that's actually really damn sad. No, but back to this. I mean, that's what we need, right? And I hope that you and I and our companies will do. I mean, we are, and I hope we drive change like we're looking to do, right? Especially with Project Takeoff, with the rare earth minerals. And then with Garrison Fathom, with the mortgage world, and with fund and the investments we're making in critical fields, right? And many of the partners that we know that we work with, that are making change. But we really need leadership, especially from the top in this country, to drive this. And this needs to be a rebirth of America. And to our listeners, I hope you like this, because that could be my platform running for president.
And if not, too bad. It's what we need anyway. So your opinion is not relevant.
But jokes aside,
your vote is.
But jokes aside, I think that's what's really going to really push people, right?
Sure.
And give people hope, because I think that's another thing, right? Is people are lacking hope. With all the controversy going on at multiple levels, all over the place, and the economy, there's a lot of lack of hope. And I think if people can inject hope driven by economics and finance, and as you notice through the years, when the economy is good and people's finances are good, a lot of other issues get resolved, right?
Right.
Because that's one less stress off of your mind. And that's, and that drives more efforts to better our society as a whole. And you can fund better education for schools. You can, do all these different things. So that's something for our listeners to think about, right? And it's very important for our listeners to really start taking it more seriously with voting, right? Because the leaders you put in DC need to be doing this, but they're not. They're too focused on so many other worthless 2-year, 4-year, or 6-year visions that's just going to be a band-aid fix, right?
Right.
And meanwhile, your leg is half torn off and you're bleeding to death, and they're trying to put a band-aid on it. So that's not going to work. Or you have COVID and they're giving you Tylenol, right? And it's like,
wait, I thought they were supposed to give you bleach or like fish food or some shit.
Yeah,
And you're right, honestly. And I think back to James Carville, who was actually one of Bill Clinton's strategists, who came up with the wonderful quip, "It's the economy, stupid." You do bring up a great point. People have hope. when they're not starving. Okay. People have hope when they are not worrying about how to pay their bills or feed their kids or whether or not they should choose between laundry detergent or fuel. Okay. And the cold hard reality is that a lot of the stuff that yes, mostly the left proclaim as solutions, yeah, okay, they're solutions, great, but they're not solutions right now. Okay.
Mhm.
Oh, just take public transportation. Just walk or ride your bike. Like, okay, great. Go ride your bike to work when you live out here in the middle of a godforsaken desert, like
Mhm.
some of us do, and see how well that works. Those types of solutions are wonderful if you already have that kind of infrastructure in place. Okay, telling somebody who's stretching their paychecks, who's offloading expenses on the credit cards, who is struggling just to make it through the end of the month, that they should be buying a Tesla so they don't have to spend as much on gas. Yeah, honestly, if we were a less civilized society, that would get you shot in the face. And it should get you shot in the face because it's not only a stupid thing to say, but it's completely inconsiderate and denies reality. Okay, the politicians that we have are fascinated with proposing, these grand solutions that can't work because the fundamentals are flawed. It's like
Mhm.
telling somebody that they should be doing more sit-ups when they're having a heart attack right in front of you. Okay, the sit-ups are not the fucking answer. Cracking their chest open and doing a bypass is the
Mhm.
answer. That's what you need to do right now. You can talk about their fitness later. Okay, but that sense of
And
immediacy isn't
right,
felt
right,
by
and to
anyone
that
but
point,
us.
it took decades to get that person to that point, right? Instead
Sure.
of instead of making the right changes and instead of um, taking care of themselves and doing all that, they wait till the last moment and they need that save. And
Oh
that's what
yeah.
we're seeing right now with our country and with our markets. It's over the past several decades. We've been just reckless.
Yeah.
Both sides of the eye are to blame. One side doesn't do enough, the other side does too much. The American people aren't paying enough attention.
Mhm.
And that's what's led us to this point, and that's really scary. And this again is something that needs to be addressed immediately, and maybe it's something we do, right? We drive that. I mean, we've had
Yeah.
success with other matters. Maybe it's something we put together, right? I mean, look, we already have enough to do with Garrison Fathom, Project Takeoff, and clients and our advocacy projects to help better America through Vaughn Global. But
But we still take
sometimes
time off to shower. So that's time that we need to just get the waterproof laptops and throw it
right,
in the tub.
and
No,
work
you're
out
absolutely right.
and work out.
And work out and work out.
Yep.
But the thing that you hint around that I know but I don't know uh if you know how to say it. What is the easiest way to give someone a sense of hope and to give someone a sense of that things are going to be okay eventually, or if not, that they can at least stomach it? A lot of that has to do with giving them something to feel accomplished with or
That is
by,
so
right?
important.
And to be perfectly honest, instead of having these discussions about minimum wage, which I personally find repulsive, who else starts at $20 an hour? A lot of trades.
Mhm.
And is it hard work? Sure. Is it backbreaking? Yeah. But is it more rewarding than putting up with Karens for 8 hours? Sure. Also true. We have kind of engendered this allergy to work in the populace, like you said, over decades, right? What we're experiencing today is a result of decades of really stupid decisions that we've made as a society, that the government has made as a legislature, and that we have made individually as people. Okay, and it's going to take decades to fix because
Mhm.
that's just how inertia works. But it needs to be fixed, and we can't legislate a solution. We can't mandate okay, you are no longer poor. Ta-da. You get a stimulus and you get a stimulus. No, that's not tenable and that's not sustainable. But shifting the focus from we're a nation that sits on our asses with Excel back to no, we're actually a country that makes stuff. And yeah, we innovate and we do all the really good high tech shit, but we also have our fundamentals down. Okay, we don't have people starving on what we would consider minimum wage jobs. No, those people are actually doing something that directly benefits society, not just slinging a happy meal. Okay, it's that type of mentality that's going to see us through this. And as horrible as this is going to sound, maybe maybe this coming recession smacks people upside the head hard enough to get them to realize that, okay, you know what, doing the same thing that we always have isn't working. We can't magic wand a problem away. So what's the ugly truth? And if that means you risk your reelection, which we already know that assumption dooms this to failure.
Mm.
But if enough people take responsibility and say, you know what, screw the reelection, screw panhandling and catering to people. I have a platform to actually get the truth out, to share what will fix this and why doing the same nonsense is not going to. I'm going to use that platform to actually, strike something for good. Maybe we'll get out of this eventually.
I couldn't agree more. And this is part of that, America Rebirth plan, right? Every single American brings value. And I think that's a key messaging as well, because to your point, a lot of people feel that they're not bringing value or they don't have that sense of accomplishment, right? And I think that's a big societal issue that we're facing is people don't
Right.
have that sense of purpose, and don't have that sense of what value they're bringing. And it's really a shame. I mean, you see suicide rates are up at all-time high, you see crime rates at all-time high, and again, a
Yep.
lot of that is contributing to the economy, right? And the lack of economy or the economic issues that we're facing.
Yeah.
And when you look at times when the economy is thriving and people are making more money and have more sense of value, those things get taken care of. So I really strongly like this America Rebirth plan that we
Sure.
came up on this podcast, which is again giving
Unscripted,
everyone,
folks.
yeah,
We just
giving
made this
everyone
shit up.
exactly giving everyone value because everyone has a purpose. Look, not everyone's going to be a Warren Buffett, and everyone's going to be an Elon
Right.
Musk, and that's okay. And I think that's what people have to realize. Like you're contributing to a society that needs to function, and everyone's role is important. It's like a company, right? You're
Yeah.
always going to need a janitor. You're always going to need a CEO. You're always going to need an assistant. You're also going to
Mhm.
need a lawyer. You're going to need,
Several.
yeah, you're going to need. So everyone in an organization brings value, and that's really important. And an organization is like America, right? Every citizen matters, and that's what I think. Politicians in DC are really lagging with, right? They make people feel that no one really has a sense of purpose, and as a
Right.
result, the economy is really amplifying that. And a good part of that too, I think. And I'm not trying to get down this philosophical rabbit hole, but I think as a society, we've also failed at that point, right? Recently,
Mhm.
in which children these days and young adults don't
Spoiled
have,
rotten.
yeah, I mean, not even spoiled, but I think a lot of them are facing mental health issues because they lack a sense of purpose, right? I mean, when you're growing up and getting, and you're not, have things to do, right?
Mhm.
Or having, let's say, chores or playing sports or having to help around the house or
Any
or
responsibility.
or responsibility, right? You know, there's a lot or participation trophies for God's sakes. That is really from a young age putting that gap into young
Sure.
adults, and I think that's a big part of it, right? You know, they don't have a sense of accomplishment or a duty, and that's back to your point earlier, right? Which is just that. When I was growing up at a young age, I had to. right?
Right.
We grew up, dirt poor. And then once you're always have responsibilities, right? And also, I credit sports. And look, you don't have to be the best at sports either. I think
It's
sports are
probably
critical.
better if you're not, honestly.
Yeah,
That'll teach you
yeah,
more for life.
yeah. It teaches you, how to be a leader. It teaches you how to be teammates. Have that feeling of losing, and
Hmm.
then winning again. Like when you lose, you start to evaluate what did I do wrong, right?
Right.
How can I become better? And it's not even just sports, right? It's other things. Whether you try to open up a lemonade stand but you made no money, why? Right? Or you have chores around the house but you didn't do it properly, or you didn't get it done on time, you get punished, why?
Oh
Right?
yeah.
So there's many aspects to it, but I think that's really another problem that we have. um is often when your country, to what I mean, we're 249, almost 250 years old here. um
Something like that, yeah.
yeah, we're around there, and we've been on the top for so long we get complacent, and I think we need to
Right.
have, like you said, a bitch slap to the face and said, hey, look, we need to not be complacent, we got to keep going here.
Yeah.
And the sense of privilege and the sense of we own the world and all this kind of stuff of everything, it's like, no, everything has to be earned, like we said last
Hmm.
week. And by you accomplishing and working hard, and really, putting yourself on the line, that's what builds character, that's what makes you learn, and
Right.
that's what progress us forward, as a country, together.
Well, exceptionalism only has merit if you can back it up,
Yep.
right? And you're absolutely right. A lot of this, I mean, there's so many things that are fucking broken. Sports are a great example. I mean, and it's also one of the things that has seen the most cuts at the developmental levels. Okay, we're not talking college, where you are then legally, if not mentally, an adult. Uh, we're talking the grade school, middle school, high school.
Mhm.
You know, people don't raise an eyebrow or get upset when they meaning the organization, whoever's in charge of the budget, cut sports or cut into art programs or anything of the sort. And the simple fact is that people are complex mechanisms. Just because something has no value to person A doesn't mean that it would have no value to the development of that child in question. And ultimately, that's the only thing that matters. And sports is fantastic not only for teaching teamwork and how to teach you how to deal with loss, but it's also inarguable in a lot of ways. Like if you're on the debate team and you lose, like, all right, yeah, the judges made something up or whatever. You can make up whatever you want to make yourself feel better. But when you're on the football field and you just get your ass run over,
Mhm.
or you're in a martial arts tournament and you just
Yep.
get the living shit beaten out of you,
Tennis
there,
court,
or the
anything,
tennis court, yeah,
boxing. Yep.
there's no way to deny or obfuscate physical pain,
Hmm.
and the sense of hurt, both bodily and mentally, that you feel. And to be perfectly honest, that's going to be something that will benefit you a lot more than finding a victim, because I've never had a boss get into a disagreement with me to the point where we have to wrestle in the middle of the boiler room or fight it out to see who's right. But that kind of like dagger in the heart feeling that you get when you're being openly criticized, when you're being openly mocked in front of your colleagues and coworkers, you know, that sucks and that's painful, but you deal with that because you are used to dealing with adversity. It doesn't it
Exactly.
doesn't make it better, it doesn't excuse it, but the simple fact is in life you will deal with adversity a hell of a lot more than you're going to deal with success. And that's just mathematics. It is statistically impossible for everybody that you meet to be kind and supportive. Most of the people you meet are going to be complete fucking dicks,
Yep.
but you need to have been able to develop as a person to the point where you can deal with that in a preferably legal fashion.
Yeah.
And where does that start? Where do you build character? By the time you're in college, it's almost too late. You
Hmm.
need to start young. There's a reason why the military loves 18-year-olds and doesn't really like 35-year-olds when they're talking about fresh enlisting. The sooner you start and the more you can mold someone, and the better, the more success you're going to have building character, and the better off they're going to be when you're done.
No, absolutely. I mean, learning to deal with adversity is so important. And, all the issues you see today, um, I'm not going to, point on specific ones, but, there's so many major issues that we're facing. And a lot of that is just simply people not be able to control their emotions and handle adversity.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
and
life's unfair, Vin.
right. And it's like, yeah,
I'm
life
a
is
victim.
unfair. It's
Yeah,
like
deal with
life
it.
is unfair. Like,
We're all
you know,
fucking victims.
and it's so funny. You ask those same people and who their inspirations are. All those people had to face it the hardest, right?
Right.
I don't, even the Kardashians, I don't care, right? I don't like the Kardashians. Okay.
I don't
I
even
like,
know how they got famous.
right. Okay. Personally, okay. They're nice people. But but the reality shows, in my opinion, are destroying America, but whatever. But even they had to, go through a lot, right? They had to go through a lot. Like, it's not just simply taping a reality show. There's more to it
Right.
than that. We talked about this last week. TikTok stars, Instagram
God.
stars, same thing, right? Business leaders, Oprah, Beyonce, Adele, whoever you aspire to, right? They had to go through very, very difficult moments and fight through adversity to get to where they want. Life's not easy. So enough of that rabbit hole, but I hope this gives our listeners some perspective, right? And whether it's their kids or themselves, never lose hope. Life is unfair. It is what it is. But you
Beat
can
your
fight
children. Oh, sorry. My mic's on.
But yeah, you're Cuban, I'm Vietnamese, so we get it.
Yeah.
Hey, there's a difference between abuse and beating. Okay, clear difference. But people have to understand that life's unfair. Deal with it, learn from it, and get better. Right? I mean, life's and even if I don't care which age you're at, you're right. Even if you're 30s or 40s or 50s, you're looking for a change, do it. Right? So many people have done that. Where later in life they're like, oh, screw this, right? They're going to do this now.
Oh, yeah.
Even entrepreneurship, right? Even if right now you have to pay the bills, work a shitty job, it sucks, but then have a plan. How much do you need to save? How much do you need to network? What do you need to do to get to that point where you can finally do what you want, right? Steve Harvey, who's one of the great inspirations for everybody.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that guy was homeless, lived in his car, took showers in public restrooms, right? Not even
Was
showers.
he paying
like
the IRS $1 million a month or something because his accountant screwed him?
Yeah, that's later down the road.
That's later. Okay.
But like he had to his showering was getting wet towels in the stalls to wipe himself down, all that kind of stuff. But then, but he kept going and going, and finally found his break, right? And then made it. But even during when he made it, like you said, the accountant screwed him over. So again, life's about to keep going and going. And I hope our listeners, this is inspirational, hopefully, to not only hope for America, but also for themselves and their families to, hey, look, there's always someone out there that's dealing with worse, right? Life is unfair, and just fucking deal with it and learn and get better, right?
That needs to go on a fortune cookie. Just fucking deal with it.
If you keep moping and whining and complaining, but not bettering yourself, life's gonna, the world's gonna move on and forget about you. Simple as that.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah.
And hopefully that's what we're seeing now, socially speaking, as a backlash to, what I will politely call idiotic moralities that we've had shoved down our throats for the past several years.
Yeah.
And no, I mean, you're absolutely right. I honestly think TikTok, maybe you can't get TikTok anymore. I don't know if that ban on the app has gone through yet or not.
Who
But
knows? Yeah.
you know, I don't think social media is necessarily a problem in causing it. I think a lot of these problems are caused because people haven't really taken the opportunity to use those types of platforms to create realistic content, right? Like the Steve Harvey videos that you send me on Instagram. I love those because he's honest and he's upfront and he doesn't, you know, spend all of his time like, oh, this is my new yacht that I'm, you know, taking to Seychelles or wherever. No, like he talks about what he went through. He talks about the hell that he had to put up with. He talks about
Yeah.
his struggle and his adversity, and you know he's got a huge following. And
He's
I
giving
have
people
to
hope.
think, yeah, I have to think that somebody watching that uh, is going to have a difference made in their life. I have to be naive and stupid and say, you know, that's doing some good. Sharing his adversity and his tribulations is helping somebody else out,
Yeah.
and it's not. Because I mean, that's the thing. Even the dumbest people know when they're being bullshitted, right? It's
Yeah.
just instinctual. Okay, we know
Crypto.
when we know when somebody's pulling the wool over our eyes, but we buy into it anyway because we want to believe.
Yep.
But I think when you're brutally honest and you're able to share something personally, I think that a makes you genuine and therefore better than most people. But I think that actually gets your point across a lot more effectively than, you know, some motivational speak. Like, I don't want to go see Tony Robbins tell me how to live a better life. I don't
Oh
fucking care.
God.
I don't give a
Yeah.
shit.
Annoy the hell out of
I'd
me.
rather listen to Steve Harvey
Yeah.
tell me how to live a better life, because at least I know that what he's saying is heartfelt and personal and something that he actually lived through.
Yeah, and that's why we get along, and the folks around us, we all get along because, you know, we're too blunt, but we've all been through similar things, right?
Right.
So we've had our ups and downs and our struggles, and you know, you just gotta keep it real, and I think people will attract to that. And look, we made our mistakes, but you know, we tell the story of those mistakes, right? We've made plenty, and
Yeah.
we'll make some more down the road, but
I'll
you know,
guarantee it. Let's start
but
right now. Let's start making mistakes today.
but overall, we come out better each time, right? And no matter how high you get, okay, I'm not talking about weed, how high you get in success, there'll always be more hurdles in front of you. So,
Absolutely.
anyways, I really hope this helps our listeners
I
on
hope
that
this
front.
becomes required listening to all new politicians, all freshman politicians. That'd be fantastic.
Oh God, yeah, exactly. But what else do we have to hit on? I mean, there's so much going on. See, so something just popped up on my screen here that really irritates me,
Oh,
and I know
good.
it irritate you because we were just covering this about DC. Tech investment bill to counter China
Uh-huh.
hits new hurdle,
Oh, God.
and it's just a feud between both parties. So again, that's irritating, right?
That's
You know,
fantastic.
it's, you know, the US semiconductor is so important for society today, right? Whether it's your phone, your car, your computers, everything that we need today has some kind of semiconductor component to it. And to see DC stalling it for political reasons
Hmm.
really, really is truly irritating. It goes back to your point, you know,
Yeah.
about, you know, we do envy sometimes the
Right.
UAE and China and sorts because of how quickly they can make their decisions.
Yep.
But to be clear to our listeners, we never want to give up our freedoms. Please
Yeah,
know
we're
that.
not actually advocating for a
Yeah.
separate type of
No.
government. We're
Yeah.
just pointing out that there are pros and cons to
Right.
what we have.
Right. But that's why I think, again, you know, our listeners and to voters across the country, you know, they work for us. So we need
Right.
to empower that. And I hope we have a president one day soon that can really drive that unification of the country and really just be fucking brutally honest, right? We have so much of this scripted crap. And I'm talking about Trump either, by the way. Trump is just, I mean, he sounds like a drunken moron sometimes. I mean, he's done some good things, don't get me wrong, economically during his presidency, but his mouth, my God, like I truly
Oh
mean
yeah.
inspirational words that can unite and also coherent in driving the DC and public-private partnerships to what we need, which is America's rebirth. So hopefully we have that someday soon.
So
Before it
when do you
gets too late.
turn 35?
Oh
And you
Lord,
can legally run for president?
down the road.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, yes, down the road, obviously. You're not going to turn 35 today.
Well, we can change some things on ID. I'm joking. Change some things on the ID, but
Oh God.
no, I'm joking. So, what else do we have to discuss? I mean, it's been a hell of a podcast thus far, and I hope our listeners enjoy it. Sometimes we do get off a rabbit hole talking about things, but I think our listeners in the past have really liked that.
Well, sure. I mean, we keep it real, just like we advocate that other people keep it real. The and it's funny because a lot of what we're talking about, there's historical precedent for it, right? Like our so-called leaders only manage to agree on anything when it comes to destroying our potential to advance, right? And it's either whether you're talking about the Desertron back in the 80s, I think that got killed in 93, or you're talking about stem cell research, or like now this tech bill, anything that has to do with not even social advancement, but just development of a science or something technological that
right.
these Luddites don't understand. That is the easiest way to just glue everybody together into a united front. And honestly, that's fucking sad. Right. It's sad that we don't have leaders that understand how tech actually works. And I'm referring to the semiconductor chip world.
Yep.
It's sad that we don't have very many politicians who understand how economics works, and that's terrifying because they're the ones passing laws that directly influence it, and etc. And so we can either insist that, okay, to be elected a politician you must have at least one PhD in a science or engineering field and another one in economics, and be at least ABT on your third doctorate for social issues. No, that's not realistic. But at the same time, like you said, they work for us. Okay. Yep. And I'm pointing the finger at myself as well. They're assholes and they're incompetent because we put them there, because
we allow it.
We as a society said, you know what? I really want a fucking idiot to tell me what to do and to make laws that affect my life. But that's what's happening. So, we're the ones to blame for their incompetence and their stupidity.
Yeah. And people need to educate themselves on how the system works too, and they can be more effective that way. I mean, right now, another thing just popped up on my screen. JP Morgan is seeing stratospheric $380 oil on worst case Russian cut. Now, look, I don't think that's going to happen, but we'll see. I think, we talked about this a little bit yesterday. I think our foreign policy and our diplomats are completely shitting the bed. You and I hate Russia as anyone else, but you have to understand how to play the chess match. And I think everyone's outside, playing hopscotch while some of these folks are playing chess. And, and I will call them out. Anthony Blinken, Jake Sullivan are horrific, right? They don't understand about freaking foreign policy or a chess match. And the moves that we're making with Russia are not doing anything. Right. And you and I talked about some of the concerns we have, and where was it, Sweden and Norway, right? Or was it Finland?
Finland, Sweden and Finland are joining
NATO, right? And look, we have to play a very delicate chess match here, because I see where, look, again, I'm not defending Russia, but
Right.
when you see the moves they made based on the warnings, and we
Hmm.
made, and the West made that move, they follow through.
Yeah.
And some of the warnings they're giving about Sweden and Finland joining NATO
Yeah.
concerned me. And that's why when I saw this headline with the $380 oil, I can see that happening.
Yeah.
Um, and and they know what they're doing. So I just hope their diplomats are playing, 3 or 4 chess moves ahead of them. I doubt it.
No, they're not even playing with
Right.
themselves, let alone
Like
three or
they're
four moves ahead.
right. And again, be clear, I'm not defending Russia because I want to take them down too. But there are ways you can take them down. But the way we're doing it right now is not working.
Right.
And
Well,
there's a
the
lot of
way we're
people
doing it
say,
right now is doing nothing or next to nothing.
right. And look, we're saying we're strengthening NATO and all that kind of stuff, but
Hmm.
I really don't see it. Right. I really don't
No.
see it. And we're not, aligning with more folks that we need to be able to counterbalance. But I'm not gonna get in this rabbit hole either. This whole
Why not? It's fun.
foreign policy matter, because that'll be another 5 hours. Um,
Well,
but I,
bandwidth is free.
yeah,
But not you're I mean, you are right. Putin, despite being a despot and an all-around piece of shit, he did say, if you do this, I'm gonna invade. Okay, well, we did the thing, not we, the US, we, the world. We did the thing and he invaded. I think at some point the diplomats need to maybe adopt a different tactic, because I just got my degree in diplomacy from Google University this
oh
morning.
god,
Uh, the sanctions are good in theory, but I don't think they're working, right? And they're not working because Russia can choke off something that we all need as a planet, being oil and gas. And this isn't a buy a Tesla and solve the problem issue. This is a issue where somebody needs to sit down and say, okay, look, motherfucker, your little tantrum is destroying the world economy. All right, period. So pull your head out of your ass or we're gonna fucking bomb you back into the Stone Age. This
right?
is not acceptable. And I get nobody actually wants a shooting conflict. Fine. But you have to take a hard line sooner or later, because if you look at the psychology of a despot, of an authoritarian ruler, they're going to get away with everything that you let them get away with. Okay, the only difference between Putin and some asshole bully that picked on you when you were a kid is that the bully does not have an arsenal of nuclear weapons, right? But the way you deal with them is going to be the same or similar enough to merit comparison. You got to put your foot down sooner or later. I think Blinken, like you said, is completely incompetent
Yeah, but the whole
and
administration,
unfit
yeah,
for the task. And honestly, we're just delaying the inevitable and we're weakening ourselves financially, by dragging this out. And when it gets to a shooting conflict, which again, God, I hope it doesn't, but it sure looks like it's going to end that way. We don't need to be in a weakened position, financially, right? We NATO, we the Western world and our European allies, we don't need to have shot ourselves in the foot and go into the fight injured, right? That's gonna hinder us.
no, absolutely. And the way I would handle it, because I love foreign policy on the side with all the time I have, but I do love studying it quite a bit.
Right.
Some great role models on this is Teddy Roosevelt and Winston Churchill, right? Teddy
Hmm.
Roosevelt, speak softly but carry a big stick, is a big one, and that's the problem, is we're speaking softly but we don't have a big stick. Um, and if people understand, Teddy Roosevelt is one of the key figures in U.S. history, one of the key presidents. He took our
Hmm.
Navy to the next level,
Yep.
right? And that really woke up the world about, okay, America's not messing around.
Right.
And that's why he knew that was really important. moving forward for the national security and defense of the country is the Navy. And then Winston Churchill, that should be an obvious one, right? Churchill,
Right.
he had the beauty of being able to charm and to use his words to unite even controversial figures, right? Like, look, back then, look, no one liked Russia, right? At the time, the enemy was Nazi Germany, and Japan, but he had the ability to be able to sit down, unite over dinner, Stalin and FDR and himself, and utilize dinner diplomacy, right? Have conversations, really figure a common ground and starting to get to know one another, right? And then also holding firm to your principles, right?
Yeah.
He didn't budge. He was like, no, they're not invading us. We're fighting.
Right.
So, it takes big balls, but also the ability to charm, right? And I think the problem lately is we haven't had really good leaders that are able to do that.
Right.
And bullies, like as you said, like Putin, they respond to strength. So
Right.
and the problem is we're not responding to strength. And if I was the president or the secretary of state, not only will I show strength with military positioning, and not being afraid of what he says, but offer many times to sit down with him and have a dinner, right? I'm going to sit down and figure out, oh, Vin, I guarantee people say, oh, Vin, that's terrible. I'm like, no. I'm like, if you want to help the world and help Ukraine, you will try to do that. And I'll also have dinners with, the Saudi crown prince, President Xi Jinping of China, the president of India. Like, we have to start doing those types of things. None of this bullshit cross the table meetings and forgetting bottled water in the first meeting. Yes, that actually happened. And Blinken and our diplomats had a first meeting with Chinese diplomats in Anchorage, Alaska, and they put them in practically a fucking school gym. With terrible chairs and desks. I forgot water. Like, are you kidding me?
Diplomacy via dodgeball.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is, as a diplomat or as any, and this applies to business, right? It's, the laws of power and the laws of human nature. Great books, by the way, to read. But
Robert Greene.
Those are key things that people need to learn is how do you deal with that. And I think that's this is going to be quite interesting for the economy. So we mentioned all this to our listeners, and why we're talking about all this is not only are we nerds when it comes to this type of stuff, but it does affect you and it affects our economy, and it's something you need to be aware of. And again, why your vote and your voice matters quite a bit. So when it comes to November this year, you have what, 3-4 months? Take a little time.
4 months and 7 days.
Yeah. Instead of jerking off to your porn or looking on Instagram all day.
I feel like you're attacking me now personally with these examples.
Right. Go to Instagram so much and online all much. Take a little of that time and start studying who your representative is, and start educating yourself a little bit more, and so that you can make a bigger impact this November, and then the following November, and then all Novembers moving forward. Because these folks work for us, okay? And your vote matters, your voice matters, and the more that they hear you, and this is coming from experience. I mean, we do lobbying, public affairs, advocacy, right? They do respond when their constituents' voices are loud. So please know that.
And that's, one of the worst things about politics, unfortunately, is that it does move slowly, especially in our system. And while we're not going to discuss any recent rulings, people need to understand that sometimes things take decades, whether you agree with them or not. It is not a one term and done affair. And so, that if we're talking about building character, personally and as a society, one of those hallmarks of character is actually perseverance and not just giving up. And, if you actually do believe something and you're not willing to spend years or decades or the majority of your life trying to advocate for that, now then I would argue you don't believe in shit. You're
Mhm.
virtue signaling to get likes on Facebook or whatever the hell else people use these days, and that's fine, but it's not going to get anything done. Okay, people need to be honest with themselves, and it's like the two list analogy, right? You take one list, you write down the five things you believe most in, right? Equality, fuzzy animals, and chemo wards, whatever. Then you write on your other list, you write down the five things that you spent the most time doing this past week. And then you take the first list and you throw it out because it doesn't matter.
Mhm.
Okay. The only thing that matters is what you're doing. And the simple fact is, most people are completely apathetic because they are not acting on what they claim to believe in.
Yeah.
Whether that's because they're lazy or because they don't know how.
Lack
I
of
can't
focus.
imagine lack of focus. I can't
Mhm.
imagine that you don't know how or you can't learn how these days, where Google tells you how to do everything. But it's not just a call to action in the sense of, well, this is a nice term that we can put on our leaflet. But you actually do have to act on it. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of people get to the point like, well, God, I voted. Why didn't things change? Well, because asshole, it's not one and done. Okay,
That
you have to keep putting effort in.
well, and it's funny. I also asked them who'd you vote for and why. I love asking that question.
Well, I voted for this guy because that's the party I am.
Yeah.
Cool. Way to
Like,
use
oh,
that brain.
it's like, so what are
Good
the top
job.
five issues that you agree with, right? And that's the point you and I are making, right? It's just that, and you're spot on. And to our listeners, again, what the big thing to take out of this is whether it's in voting or life or anything you do, hold yourself accountable. And the only way you can help yourself and then the others around you is to take care of what you need to take care of, and then set an example and accomplish what you need to accomplish. Um, and look, we all have our moments, right? And that's fine. But get
Uh-huh.
your ass back up and get going.
Yep.
Life is short, but at the same time, it can be long, right? So, um, I rather feel like life is short because we've made so many accomplishments than have it
Hmm.
feel long because we're just dragging ass.
Well, I think the birthing metaphor of America Reborn, I think that's great. And I realize how utterly hypocritical this is going to sound, me saying this as a guy who's never going to give birth. But birthing is painful and it's miserable, and it's, you ask anybody who is actually a mother and they'll all tell you like, yeah, it sucked, but at the end of it, they have something that they love very much and that they say uh was worth the pain and misery that they had to go through for,
Yep.
yeah, in my mother's case, 40 hours
Yeah, my yeah
to
yeah my
create.
mother bit so hard she broke her teeth. Yeah.
And yeah, that's just my cis hetero male viewpoint on something I'm never gonna experience. But
Right.
there is something to be said for that. There's, if you want the historical one, I think it was Frederick Douglass that said, "Without struggle, there is no progress."
Right.
Now I've checked my history nerd box for the day.
There you
Uh,
go.
but no,
Hey,
it's good points. Hmm.
Hey, by the way, crypto broker Voyager Digital suspends trading withdrawals. Voyager is among crypto firms that have taken a hit for Three Arrows Capital's liquidity problems.
Oh God.
If listeners didn't listen to us last week, we told you so.
Yeah, yeah. In case all that philosophical political crap has put you to sleep, let's shit on crypto some more. Uh,
Hilarious.
no,
What else do we
I
have?
did not read that. That's fantastic. That's a way to be anti-fragile, jackasses. Uh,
Yep, man. It's amazing. And we have an op-ed coming out soon about how markets need to stop being blinded by innovation. Innovation
hmm.
is great, but you can't be blinded with your financial principles and how economics works, right? All these
Oh
innovations
yeah,
are great, but you also have to look at the functionality and does it actually make sense financially?
yeah.
Because there's so many inventions out there, but only a handful are actually useful, right?
Right.
It actually makes sense. So you can't just think that this is going to work just because it's the next great thing, supposedly.
Right.
And again, to be clear, you and I have discussed this. We support Web3 and blockchain, just not crypto. And even Web3 and blockchain right now is kind of iffy, right? It's the technology of blockchain that we love because there's a lot of potential there, but it just hasn't been utilized quite yet. But crypto right now, it's practically all Ponzi.
No, Vin, that's not true. Some of them are just rug pulls.
Oh God! Anything else we got to cover, or is that enough for our
I
listeners this
think
week?
we've alienated quite enough people for the week.
Okay, sounds good. So to recap, get your shit together. We love all of you. Vote. It's critical. Financially, be disciplined. Be patient.
Stop complaining.
Stop complaining. And don't buy crypto. And with that, happy Independence Day. God bless America.
Hoorah. America.
America.